so many mail-in votes. It's taking days to count them. And here's where it stands tonight. On the road to 270 electoral votes, Joe Biden has 253. Donald Trump has 214. And all eyes tonight, once again, on Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia in particular. They are three extremely tight races. The margins have been narrowing all day in both directions, actually. Pennsylvania alone, with 20 electoral votes, has the potential to put Joe Biden over the top. And he's got momentum on his side there. But in Arizona, it's a different story.
I don't know. If you're like me, I found myself a moment just kind of staring at the numbers as they click and change. Our team is in place. Chuck Todd, Andrea Mitchell, and Casey Hunt. Chuck, break it down. What are we going to see? What are we watching for tonight?
Well, we're going to see what we're going to get in. I mean, what we're watching for is it's what we've been watching the last 3 nights. And by the way, in fairness, we warned people months ago that election night could become election week. And lo and behold, we didn't mean to be so accurate. Here we are. But let's start with Pennsylvania. When we last left you last night, I believe the president had a vote lead of about 165,000. I would say it's been coming in at a steady clip. I wouldn't call it a fast clip. I would say steady clip. We've gotten some vote out of Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh in the west. We've gotten some vote in Philadelphia, and it's basically former Vice President Biden has cut the lead by 100,000. Let me show you what we think's available. We are out there. We still think he could net another 50,000 votes out of Philadelphia County when all is said and done. There's extraneous there in Delaware County. There may be a few votes left in Chester County, which now more and more people who watch us know where Casey's from. And we've got 2 Philadelphians here with Andrea and Casey. Montgomery County, this could be, a few straggling ballots. And that's another thing I got to remind you of at this point. We're getting to the point where pieces of ballots could be coming in from a whole lot of areas. The biggest chunk we expect to be from the Philadelphia area, which is, again, why Democrats are so optimistic about what they think's coming from Pennsylvania, and Republicans are so nervous. So will we get that vote tonight, or will we get that in the morning? I think Andrea's had some reporting that indicates it may be in the morning that we get some of this vote. Let's go to another place here, Georgia, which has been, look at the margin right now. Less than 2,500 votes. This has been steady, all same thing. The votes have been coming in at a steady clip, and Joe Biden's been winning approximately 65 to 70% of what's been counted. It's all been vote by mail. A lot of it has been in the Atlanta area, but we think we've gotten most out of DeKalb. There still might be some in Fulton. There still might be some in Cobb. These are all Biden areas. Probably done there in Douglas. When we do 99 these days, we don't put anything at 100, but our 99 is the assumption that we're at the tail end there. There was some vote out of Savannah earlier today that also brought the lead down. So we are down to maybe 15,000 ballots left. So if he wins 2-1, I mean, look, this is a race that's going to be a tie, plus or minus a couple thousand votes.
Let's check out Arizona, because I think our producer just said we just got some new votes in.
Well, then let's take a look. It was the next state I was going to go to anyway.
In Maricopa County.
Here we are. Well, as you can see, Joe Biden's lead is down to 46,000. This was something that has been sitting at 68,000 all day. It's what we left last night with. And last night, just to remind people, the vote that got counted last night, we had said that President Trump needs to win 57 to 58% of all remaining ballots. Last night, in the first vote that were counted last night that got dropped into the count, he did get 57.5%. So obviously here, more has come in. You can see in Maricopa, we don't know for sure how much is left. And we don't know when exactly all of it's going to come in. It could be a little bit longer. But I can tell you this, all of our projections seem to think this is going to be razor tight. In fact, maybe Georgia razor tight. So don't go anywhere on Arizona. This one, even as we get more vote in. Now, look, if we get more vote in and it's more of a 51-49 in the president's direction, then he may be that he can't, he'll come up short. But we are going to wait to see more vote, because it has been coming in at a clip that could allow the president to overtake Biden in that vote count. And then, of course, there's one more state that we're waiting on in Nevada. And this was something we thought we'd get today. And now it looks like we will get tomorrow or Saturday. The Clark County registrar said that There is more vote that they will complete by Saturday, but we should see more tomorrow. We did get a little bit today. When we left you last night, Joe Biden had a lead of just under 8,000. When a very small chunk of vote, and I say very small, about 12 to 13,000 ballots came in, he won those 2-1. They all came from Clark County, and it expanded his lead to just about 11,000, as you say, 438. So he won those 2-1. It was too small of a sample to make us think this is going to extrapolate out. When we see a little bit more, we'll see what it tells us. John Ralston, who's an expert on Nevada politics, doesn't think there is enough Republican vote to overtake it. But you know what? We want to count the ballots.
Okay, and now you know, in a nutshell, why we're still on the air here tonight. When we're waiting for
If that's
votes.
a nutshell, Savannah, that's a big nutshell. It's hard to find the walls of it.
Yes, but we'll continue to follow it. Gotti Schwartz, our correspondent in Phoenix, is watching the Arizona vote count for us. He was watching it come in live, and we just got another batch of vote. I won't ask you to do math, Gotti, but what are you hearing from folks about, on both sides, about what they feel is going to happen here in Arizona?
Yeah, so that batch came from that building right over there. We've got this sizable crowd right here. The people in this crowd are here supporting the president. They say they want to make sure all their votes are counted, and they are confident that the president will carry Arizona. I want to show you, it's a little bit more of a calm scene so far than what we saw yesterday. I'm going to show you why. So we've got this crowd over here, and we've got some people speaking. I'm just going to work my way through here. Sorry, howdy. Sorry. So we've got some gentlemen that just came in a little while ago with some long guns. Other than that, before that, it was mostly handguns. Here in Arizona, it's an open carry state, so that's not necessarily out of the ordinary, but most people had sidearms. Now we're starting to see long guns into the night, but again, that is a constitutional right, and here in Arizona, it's not necessarily out of the ordinary, so it might be a little bit jarring for people to see at home, but there are people with firearms here in this crowd. They say they are here because they want to peacefully protest, and they say that is part of that peaceful protest. Now, this is what I wanted to show you here. These are barriers that they've put up to try to give the Maricopa County Election Center a little bit of a berth. Yesterday, you saw the crowd. They were right up against the wall over there, and you could hear them chanting through the window. They were a lot more aggressive yesterday. It might have been a different group, because today the vibe has been more subdued. We've heard some speakers actually say they don't want to hear conspiracies. They don't want to hear talk of QAnon. They want to make sure that this is focused on the ballot. We actually had somebody come out just a little while ago, a Republican, and try to explain to them that while the Sharpie rumors that were flying around right now were very inconvenient, and they did have some questions about them, they did seem to be within the margin, with something that is legitimately seen by Maricopa County as an effective means of marking your ballot. So that's one of the things that we've seen so far in this crowd. But again, it's 7 o'clock right now, still relatively early here in Arizona. And again, those ballots just came out. They do show that President Trump is closing that gap between Joe Biden, who is in the lead. It's gone from 69,000 votes to a gap of about 40,000 votes, as you guys were just talking about. And we'll see if we can get possibly another batch a little bit later tonight.
Oh,
Guys,
I was just about to ask you real quick if we were going to get more tonight, if you're expecting that. And do you know just generally how many ballots are left in Arizona to be counted?
Rough math, we're talking about something like 200,000 here at Maricopa County. When it comes to Arizona as a whole, we have seen some returns come in from some of the smaller counties, but we're looking at probably 300,000, 350,000 that still have to come in. And unfortunately, from the SOS, from the Secretary of State here, she has said that it is possible that we could see this go into this weekend. Guys?
All right, we've come to expect a long way.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to Pennsylvania now. Chris Jansing is in Harrisburg. Chris, tell us about the count there. What are you seeing?
Hey, Lester, I just was texting with a local elected. I've been keeping in touch with electeds throughout today to see what they're hearing. And he tells me that they are expecting another drop of some, and I don't know, he didn't have any description of how many that means, but some votes soon out of Philadelphia. But he did say that they are expecting to continue to count into the night. And in fact, that they've been doing math. And what they believe is that at the rate the count is going and the rate that we see the pace of votes going to Joe Biden, they believe that he will surpass President Trump sometime between 4 or 5 a.m. And one of the things that we talked about was the Secretary of State, who kind of rolled back her suggestion that there might be a decision tonight. There had been a delay because of the lawsuit that was filed, and they had to put a pause on the counting today. One of the things that happens if they continue to count tonight and they get the bulk of this done tonight, then any delays that might be caused by a lawsuit become moot. So again, looking for some new votes to come out sometime soon and the count to continue through the evening. Lester.
All right, Chris Jansing there for us. Thank you.
Well, let's talk about the candidates. We heard two very different messages from them today. Both came before the cameras. Joe Biden expressed confidence that ultimately he will win the race. He urged patience. The president repeated false claims of fraud.
Senator and I, we continue to feel very good about where things stand. We have no doubt that when the count is finished, Senator Harris and I will be declared the winners.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us.
Well, we're duty-bound to say there is no evidence that there are illegal votes being counted, but votes are continuing to be counted as expected. Let's go to our correspondents. Hallie Jackson's at the White House, Jeff Bennett at Biden headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. Hallie, let's start with you, the president's statement and what the state of mind is inside the Trump campaign tonight.
Sure. So let's take those two pieces, Savannah, starting with the president's statement, because remember, this is the first time now we have seen him on camera delivering remarks since that very late night, early morning hours speech that he gave in the East Room at the White House on election night. The president, rather than stepping back from the fraudulent claims, the false claims that he made, he is leaning into this, again, prematurely declaring that he believes he's won this race, even though there are still, of course, ballots yet to be counted. He is talking, as you mentioned, about the idea of fraud, he calls it, in the election system. And to be crystal clear here, there is no evidence of widespread fraud. There are no reports of it. There is no systemic issue with this election. It is proceeding exactly as it was intended to proceed and exactly as we thought it would proceed, with ballots being counted in these key states legitimately. Yes, it's taking a while, but that is because, of course, a lot of these ballots were mailed in largely because of the pandemic. So there is, I've been talking with sources tonight, and I can tell you that there is, to a degree, some level of discomfort with the way that the president's messaging is on this issue, specifically as it relates to what we've heard from him in just the last couple of hours. As for the path, you know, here, campaign officials, people in and around the campaign, really believe it comes down to Pennsylvania and Arizona, but that is a very narrow path. In order for this to work for the president, basically, he's got to hang on to that lead that Joe Biden is chipping away at in Pennsylvania, and he's got to overtake the lead that Biden has in Arizona. That is the way that the campaign believes that the best way that he would have this narrow path to victory. Listen, I think I can sum it up in the words of somebody else that I talked to today. Confident? No. Is it possible? Yes. Is one of our sources is telling our team here. Could the president get lucky? Absolutely. There is still that possibility, but it is looking like an ever-narrowing path for President Trump here. So I would say that the overall sense is really, I think, defiance from the president as he's pushing these legal fights here. And by the way, that strategy isn't working everywhere. We saw judges dismiss two of those lawsuits in Georgia and Michigan today because there's just not evidence to back up the idea that anybody's breaking the law.
Hey, Hallie, are you hearing anything about any internal discussions or any, thought that maybe the president shouldn't come out, or maybe he should not talk about some of these conspiracies?
Yes, absolutely, Lester. And again, this all is sort of happening tonight, so we're still working on reporting this out. But I can tell you that I spoke with one sort of source familiar with the president's thinking here who had some concerns about this. Now, that said, I think there's also some concern. I think people in and around the president's circle often feel aggrieved by media narratives, and I think that there is some of that is playing into this as well. But I do think that, you are seeing, even from Republicans outside the president's circle, concern that is growing with the way that he's handling this. On the the flip side, what's interesting, Lester, is the president's family. You're seeing, for example, his son calling on other Republicans to basically get on board and get behind the president because, for example, Donald Trump Jr. believes that's going to play a part in the 2024 election.
Yeah, that was one of the conversations we had here today, earlier, about other Republicans not necessarily falling in line with these theories.
Well, Marco Rubio, for instance, has tweeted, if a candidate believes a state is violating election laws, they have a right to challenge it in court and produce evidence in support of their claims. And also, taking days to count legally cast votes is not fraud directly at the president.
Marco Rubio, a Florida senator who is not one to cross swords with the president very often, so it's notable. We also heard from Pennsylvania's Republican senator essentially saying, let the votes be counted, Casey.
And that's the message it seems like we're getting right now from most elected Republicans, even as the president's family seems to be suggesting that those who want to be the future of the Republican Party aren't being loyal enough in this moment. We are hearing an overall message that is much more focused on count the votes, use the process, have faith in the process. I mean, even saying if you can go to the court and the court says you've got standing, okay, that's part of our system. But so far, they are really reinforcing the system itself. And that's really what's separating them potentially from the president.
Well, there's a tension, isn't there, within the Republican Party over this? Because in point of fact, Republicans down the ballot did very well on Tuesday night. So for the president to say, hey, there's something funky going on with this election, undermines the very real gains that Republicans had. So do you sense that some Republicans are saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't know if we're into this strategy of casting aspersions on the entire process that went on Tuesday?
Because that elected some House members. They got seats back. They defeated some of the incumbent Democrats who had just been elected in 2018. It's the same ballot. They're all on the same ballot. If the ballot is fraudulent, then their elections are also in dispute.
And, I had a lot of conversations with Republicans over many weeks heading into the election about, okay, there are so many instances where they didn't stand up to President Trump on things where a lot of their critics said, hey, you should. And I said to them, we know how President Trump's going to handle this. He told us before the election that he was going to do exactly what he did tonight, that he was going to come out and question the results of the election. And almost to a person, they told me in private conversations, we are not ready to give the American experiment over to Donald Trump. This is a line too far. They said, okay, he goes to the courts end up declaring if he's got to win this election in the courts, and the courts say yes, we'll go with that. But if he loses in court, if he loses fair and square, we're going to stand up and say to the American people, this is fair and square. So they are facing, I think, a test they didn't want to have to face. But so far, they are meeting it in the way I was told that they would.
It's a bit awkward, too, because at the same time, some of these folks that got reelected in a year that it looks like Joe Biden may get elected president do have the president to thank for getting the Trump base out. Look, we know there's two distinct Republican set of voters. There's those that are animated by the president's on the ballot. And we saw that in 2018 when he wasn't on the ballot. And being on the ballot did matter in a lot of these districts that Democrats won in 2018 that we call these Trump districts. Many of them went right back. But at the same time, we do see some evidence. We talked about there's not a lot of split ticket voting. There was some key split ticket voting. You can't tell me that Republicans, that the voters that voted for Joe Biden in New Hampshire, for instance, some of them voted for Joe Biden and a Republican Senate and House candidate so that New Hampshire's legislature could go Republican. So it goes to this point that the president really is sort of, and it's making it very awkward for these elected Republicans who, yes, they owe the president's supporters the base. And at the same time, they know that some Biden voters put him in office, too.
We need to take a break here. We're going to talk with a man who knows something about presidential election cliffhangers. Our exclusive interview with former Vice President and presidential candidate Al Gore when our special Decision 2020 coverage continues.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
Welcome back to our Decision 2020 coverage. I'm Lester Holt, along with Savannah Guthrie. Joining us now is the Attorney General of Nevada, Aaron Ford. Mr. Attorney General, thank you for joining us again. Nice to see you.
Hi, Lester. Hi, Savannah. Great to be back.
Hello.
Tell us about this lawsuit from the Trump campaign and your response.
Well, this lawsuit that they announced that they were going to file this morning at 8:30 is, to this point, non-existent. They've been talking about it all day, but I haven't seen anything filed or served on us. That said, Trump did issue a letter today saying that they sent a list to Attorney General Barr of people who they say, and I quote, appear to have improperly cast mail ballots in the election, unquote. Appear to have, though? I mean, Trump's hints and hunches are neither evidence nor proof. Rather, they're just a perfect example of speculation, which is the same basis on which the courts have thrown out civil lawsuits they filed in the state here before. So I don't give any credence to that either.
And their claim is that there are thousands of illegitimate votes. Have they presented any evidence?
None at all. They've submitted information, they say, to AG Barr, but they've not submitted anything to my office, for example, for consideration.
And just separately, I'm sure having learned of these allegations and that a lawsuit might be forthcoming, you've looked into it yourself. Do you have any evidence of any of the underlying accusations that have been made here?
We don't have any evidence of widespread voter fraud going on. In fact, historically, we have not had much voter fraud, and that comes directly from the lips of our current Secretary of State, Barbara Sagatsky, a Republican, who has run this elections and understands what goes into it. And so, again, I don't give any credence to these contentions. It's just another effort, another example of them trying to undermine the integrity of the election and to cease sows of doubt.
All right. Well, Attorney General Ford, thank you for talking to us. It's good to see you.
Yeah, we're still waiting results in Nevada. Well, let's turn to John Ralston, who is our Nevada guru, a longtime political correspondent there lately for the Nevada Independent. John, we saw a big new batch of votes from Clark County. That's Las Vegas. That's obviously a Democratic stronghold in Nevada. What's your analysis of what came in and perhaps just as importantly, what is still to come?
Those are the questions, Savannah. So what came in, as you mentioned, were 14,000 votes from Clark County. These are mail ballots. And Joe Biden won by about 2-1, picked up about 4,500 votes out of those 14,000, now has an 11,500 lead in Nevada. But that was only a small fraction of the number of mail ballots that are left in Clark County. There are probably about 175,000 ballots left in Clark County and about 20,000 in the rest of the state. But the issue is that this is the Democratic stronghold, as you said, Savannah. The mail balloting here all through the last 3 weeks or so has gone 2-1 or so for Joe Biden. There is no reason to think that the remaining ballots aren't going to have similar percentages as the ones that came the last 3 weeks and the ones that we saw reported today.
And when people look at that map of Nevada and they see that huge red section in the middle, what kind of population are we talking about there?
Well, it's a very small part, a percentage of the population, even though it's by far the biggest landmass, as you noted, Lester. That's usually about 12, 13% of the vote, and it overwhelmingly went for Donald Trump. And one of the reasons that the race is so close is that Trump lost Reno, Washoe County by a little bit and lost Clark County by a lot. And the rural counties came in so overwhelmingly for him that's usually offset for the Democrat by the win in Clark County. But Joe Biden, as of yet, now remember, there's all those tens of thousands of mail ballots to be counted. He only won Clark County by about 8%. Hillary Clinton won Clark County by 11%. It was expected that Joe Biden would do at least that well. He hasn't, and that's why the race is so close. But he could increase that margin dramatically. 51,000 new votes are going to be reported tomorrow morning in Clark County.
All right.
John Ralston, thanks.
Tomorrow morning, okay, from your lips to God's ears, as they say. But I mean, I thought we heard that it might also be Saturday.
Could be. But look, I want to just show you, we can show you some of these numbers here and compare them to 4 years ago. This is, it's funny, in most of these battleground states, Joe Biden did outperform Hillary Clinton in most of these key counties. We've seen it, and in some cases, almost just getting the Gary Johnson vote from 4 years ago, the third-party vote from 4 years ago. But anyway, here we are in Clark County, as he was saying, and just so you can see it here, in this case, it looks like the Gary Johnson vote from 4 years ago, her 10-point win, even though Joe Biden actually has a higher percentage of the vote in Clark County, Donald Trump got less because the Gary Johnson vote there were clearly, it looks like, more Republican-leaning. So he seems to have done there. But you can see this is what Barack Obama did in Clark County in 2012, winning it substantially by double digits, got 100,000 net votes out of here. Right now, he's only getting 64,000 net votes out of there. So this explains how a 4 or 5 point race that we saw the last couple of cycles is what we're looking at today.
Might this also be a place where Trump overperforming with Latinos might have made a difference?
Actually, I want to point out something. I've not been a big fan of the exit polls this year, and I was sort of somebody who was poo-pooing them early on. But there was one thing that jumped out at me early in those early exit polls before we started counting the ballots. We asked people the question of what are you prioritizing? What should we be prioritizing? Dealing with the coronavirus or opening up the economy? And most of the battleground states in these early exit polls, and I think we're going to reweight them in a way, but most of the battleground states voters picked virus over the economy. There were 2 battleground states that were 1-to-1 even. One was Ohio, and the other one was Nevada. And think about Nevada. Think about the Las Vegas Strip. These are folks that haven't worked for a while. A lot of people haven't worked. Obviously, the Strip's open right now, but we're not traveling. So there is a lot of, there's a saying, I think John Ralston would say it, when the country gets a cold on the economy, Nevada gets the flu. So I think you can't underestimate that as well. There's no doubt. And then that's the economic message is, I think, what has appealed to some working class folks across racial lines.
And
I think we've seen some real evidence of it.
Nevada by 2.4% in 2016, so it wasn't.
Look, here it is. Gotta love my producer, Natalie Cucciara. We talk, and she puts it in the board, and our reweighted exit poll, we had it, but as we've seen vote come in, just narrowly, more Nevada voters said rebuilding the economy should be prioritized over containing the virus. And I just think that we know rebuilding the economy folks were Trump voters. Do we have that little tool? No, we don't. And that we know that virus folks were Biden voters. So I think I think this tells you something.
All right. Well, joining us now are NBC News contributors Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino, and Hugh Hewitt, host of the Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network. Hugh, let me go to you. And I don't know if you tapped into our conversation before the last commercial break, talking about Republicans not necessarily surrounding the president and having his back on this issue of election fraud that he alleges. What are your thoughts about that, and how's this going to play out?
Well, Lester, within the hour of our going on the air, I spoke with a senior member of the House Republican leadership, and they are very supportive of the president, but I want to explain why that is. They have made extraordinary gains in their views. NBC is projecting 209 Republican seats. They believe they could have 212, maybe 214. Mike Garcia in California 25 has just moved ahead. And they are very, very grateful for what Chuck pointed out. The president mobilized the base that turned out to elect numbers that they were not expecting. And the Democratic caucus, by the way, had a very contentious call today. They have a civil war on their hands within that caucus. So they are supportive of what he's done. They're extremely supportive of his message that if you listen to the entire presentation the president made this afternoon, or at 6:30 p.m., is that 2020 is a year that is going to live in polling infamy. It is suppression in the eyes of the Republicans, and they agree wholeheartedly with the president that the polling errors, which were systemic errors that are built-in bias apparently now, suppress their votes, suppress their contributors, and suppress the ability to win even more seats. So they support the president's meta messaging, not just for this election, but for the coming election, that big money and big media is against the party.
How does that all? Yeah. Okay.
Can I speak for our polling a minute here? And I understand Hugh's. No, I understand Hugh is talking about what the president's supporters believe. But I can tell you about our polls. There is nothing about that. Nobody is intentionally weighting them incorrectly, whether it's on the NBC Wall Street Journal or Marist that we have used as polling. And I just want to get that out there. I understand that people want to make some of these accusations. And I know Hugh's not making that accusation. Hugh, I know you're not. But I do want to just clarify there that that is not. I have yet to work with a polling firm that has acted or done that.
Well, be that as it may, Hugh, I was just going to ask you about sort of the intellectual inconsistency there, for lack of a better way to put it. I mean, you're saying the polls are wrong, and therefore they've suppressed and depressed your voters, and your voters didn't turn up because they were too depressed about the polling that said you were behind. Well, that's one thing, but he's saying, but also there was fraud. I mean, which one is it? Because saying that the polls depressed his voters so they didn't show up is essentially acknowledging that he appears to have gotten fewer votes.
Well, Secretary Clinton said to me in an interview after her loss, you can hold two thoughts. There can be both systemic bias in the polling, which is not intentional, and Chuck is right. I don't believe it's intentional. I believe it's systemic. That is the same argument that goes to other issues as to whether or not you intend to be wrong or whether you are simply wrong. This year was the worst year in polling history with the most significant effects. They are not, however, agreeing with the assertion that fraud has been proven anywhere, but they are open to it, and they want the spotlight to be thrown on irregularities and especially on non-transparency. And the president mentioned that this afternoon as well, or at 6:30, that in Philadelphia, the Republicans won a lawsuit because the transparency was not being forthcoming. There have been not just anecdotes, but a fairly long string of anecdotes about lack of transparency.
Fair enough. Isn't there a difference, though, between saying we should have transparency, we want to make sure the votes are counted and counted fairly and only legal votes, and saying I was cheated and I really won this election? I mean, there is a big, vast chasm of difference between those two statements.
He didn't say I was cheated and I won this election. He said they're going to fight to make sure that every legal vote is counted. And as the leader of a party that depends upon honesty in vote tabulation and polling, he's being applauded by Republicans. So I just wanted, you asked me about what do the Republicans believe? They believe he is fighting a very good fight. They will not agree with every assertion he makes. I certainly haven't seen any evidence of fraud, but I have seen evidence of systemic bias in polling, not intentional, but it's overwhelming, and it does suppress Republican turnout.
Let me just say a word about the transparency issue, because the Philadelphia County Board of Elections put out a statement tonight saying that the difference in their argument was between whether the 19 Trump campaign people, the poll watchers, they were inside, they were not outside, whether those 19 people could be 6 feet away or 10 feet away. And because of COVID, the board had wanted them to be 10 feet away. And the court ruled that they have to be allowed to be 6 feet away. They are inside, they are watching, there is no lack of transparency, and I was in Philadelphia and have been covering this whole thing and questioning all of these issues. And Pete Williams and our court people are saying the same thing. That's not what was decided by the court.
And two things just very quickly. There is... at this point, I don't know. I understand he was talking to people who are close to the president and he's reflecting that position. I just think it's important that we say right now the preponderance of public comments about this from Republicans don't really reflect that. I mean, if you look at the way they've handled the president in the past and you compare it to what they're doing right now, they are not lining up behind him the way they often do. So that is one piece of this. The other piece of this is, I would say, there is no evidence that, I mean, Republican turnout was off the charts. More people voted for President Trump this time than voted for him in 2016. I mean, there is not any evidence that there was depressed turnout for any particular reason among Republicans. The opposite, in fact, to the point that it's how Democrats are in some ways explaining their unexpected losses. They're saying, we assumed all these new voters would vote for us, when in fact we should have assumed, oh, actually Republicans could bring new voters into the process, because the reality is they did.
Well, and I just want to say, because Hugh, you and I had a little back and forth about this, I'm paraphrasing, but this is an actual quote from the president. He says, if you count the legal votes, I easily win. So I think that, the clear implication there is that he's saying, if I'm losing, then there must be something illegal afoot. And but we hear you, and it's we value having you on because we want to hear what folks are telling you and how Republicans are feeling about these various positions that that are being taken here.
And Maria, we don't want to leave you hanging.
I don't want to.
Oh.
Yeah,
There's so much to unpack there, Lester. So much to unpack there, Lester. Look, listen, I think if we level with each other, I, for the last 16 years, have spent my life dedicating to increasing the vote, encouraging every single person to go out, to register, to vote. And for the first time, we see a surge in youth voters, and they are making a marked difference in Georgia. We are talking about 2,500 vote spread in Georgia, less than 10,000 in Nevada. When people say that the vote doesn't matter, this election is showing not only does it matter, but it's going to be critical to our thriving democracy. Juxtapose that to a president who is saying stop the counting in one city and saying continue the counting in another. And he's trying to delegitimize the process of our democracy in a way that every single person should just abhor. When he is saying that these votes don't count, you are talking about places that you have a Democrat and a Republican right next to each other verifying those ballots. What do you say to those individuals, those party faithfuls, when you have a Democrat and a Republican side by side, say, pouring their life out right now? I mean, none of us have had too much sleep, but they haven't either, with the scrutiny of not just their immediate community, but the world. And you're telling them that what they're doing is a farce? That's not only unfair, but it delegitimizes the process that we all deeply believe in. And if we are to level with each other, the moment that we stop believing in the process, that is when you actually have nefarious activity. What the president did tonight was not just an injustice to the people who stood in line, who voted despite the pandemic, the people right now that are not seeing their families because they're counting those ballots, but is a disservice to our democracy and to the office of the president. He knows better. And this is something that he was projecting long before. He was encouraging his people to vote in person because he knows that Democrats vote by mail. When he's saying that the process to stop the counting, it's in places that he knows that by court of law, that as long as there are ballots being counted and postmarked before Election Day, they count. It always has. He's trying to change the rules that have been established by Democrats and Republicans. And if it has to go to the court, he should have the decency of saying, I don't believe that this piece of this election right here was legitimate. I'm going to take it to the courts, because you know what? He's not the first one to contest an election, but the way he's using his office is absolutely unacceptable for us. And we should demand and expect better. And I congratulate all those new voters, the people that came out, regardless of who they voted for, because that is what makes our democracy strong.
Hugh, you want to get one last word in on that?
Well, I just go back to what the first question is. What are Republicans thinking? They're thinking they had a very good night on Tuesday night, thanks in part to Donald Trump. They got at least 210 to maybe 214 members of the House, and they applaud his focus on polling, which they believe suppressed their contribution and their voter. And this is why I think we ought to carry every minute of every presidential speech, because people are hearing different things when they don't get to hear the president. That's what I think is my message, and we have to disagree on the legitimacy of his argument.
He does. The reason that the networks cut away is that we know that he uses this as an ability for him to shape message with misinformation. The majority of the times that he actually gets on here, he's not responsible, neither on Twitter, neither on Facebook. There has never been a president where people had to censor.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. We're going to have to leave it there. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you guys each other's text, and you can continue this off camera. Hugh, thank you so much. Maria Teresa, appreciate you too. Appreciate it.
A quick break here, and we'll continue with our special Decision 2020 coverage in just a moment.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient, you're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Well, we are watching the battlegrounds, and one, as I've been starting to say, the plot thickens in Georgia, and it's nearly a tie at this point.
Do you like close races?
Oh, do I ever? Not really, no.
Next, on night three, you don't anymore. Just for sort of, you want to take a picture. First of all, John Lopinski, our director of elections, he told me a night and a half ago, our models say this could get down to less than 0.1%. Well, just for history's sake, 49.4. 49.4. I would say it's not down to 0.1%. It is somehow less than that, if that's possible.
1,900 votes. Look at that.
1,900 votes. Again, as I've said before,
99% in. Could that be the vote that's coming?
No, we got a. Let me have it in my notes here. A second here. We got a report at 8 o'clock. There's basically about 7 counties that have anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000. Most of the counties are here, but there's a few stragglers here. So you cannot. The 2-to-1 margin that Biden had been getting, I don't know if I would count on that for this last remaining about 7,000 votes. So,
but that's enough to change that.
The point is,
right?
This is this. You might as well. We are sitting here with.
Coin toss.
We cannot tell you. We have to wait till every vote is counted. Okay. By the way, there's overseas and military ballots will get counted if they arrive by tomorrow. So that's the other thing here. These are we may get all of the votes that were cast by mail. But the military and overseas ballots have until tomorrow to get in. So we are going to be, and I think
there's about 8,900 of those. There's a lot in Georgia.
Well, there is as many as. We don't know how many of them will make it back in time. This is ironic. This is one of those where they kept a tighter deadline. One might argue that some of those, that the Republicans now wish they had a longer deadline to get those military overseas ballots. And by the way, as this race has tightened in Georgia, there's another race that tightened as those votes came in. David Perdue, who had been running a bit ahead of the president, but we had seen this come down, and he's now below 50. We haven't officially said this is going to be a runoff. David Perdue just sent out a fundraising email saying, runoff in Georgia, let's be prepared to fight. So he is acting as if he knows he's going to be in a runoff. But again, haven't officially called that.
All right, so we'll keep an eye there. Pete Williams is keeping his eye on the lawsuits, the legal moves that are going on already, some taken by the Trump campaign as recently as today. Pete, bring us up to date. What's the bottom line here?
Well, I think one of the bottom lines is the mismatch between the president's rhetoric tonight and what these lawsuits actually allege. Most of them are about the process for counting the votes. There have been 10 lawsuits that have been filed in the last couple of days. 2 of them have been thrown out. 1 of them has been withdrawn. There's basically the ones that have been that are no longer active are in Michigan, Nevada, and Georgia. The complaint dismissed in Georgia. The challengers, the judge found in Michigan, didn't have sufficient evidence that the people weren't being allowed to watch the votes. But if you look at most of the lawsuits have been filed now in Pennsylvania, and there's still a lot of them working through the courts. And unquestionably, the Trump campaign has succeeded in both state and federal court by saying we're not getting enough access in Philadelphia. The state court seems sympathetic to that. A federal judge tonight listened to lawyers for the Trump campaign and the city duke it out and said, look, can't you just agree? Let's let more people in. And both sides said, OK, we're going to do that. We're going to let more people in for the whatever remaining time there will be to count votes in Philadelphia. But most of the lawsuits in Pennsylvania have been about a question that strangely has not been resolved after all these years of having elections in Pennsylvania, which is, what is the law on whether people get to be in the room when the votes are counted? Sort of sounds like Hamilton, in the room where it happens. The state Commonwealth Court said today it's ambiguous. We're not quite sure what it means, but it must mean more than just being on one corner while they're doing the thing in the other corner. There has to be some meaningful opportunity to watch it. Doesn't mean you can challenge ballots, and that's a curious thing about Pennsylvania law. There's no provision in the law for the observers to say, wait a minute, don't count that vote. It doesn't have a signature on it. So they have to be able to observe, and the Trump people have been pretty successful in making that point. But in terms of what might make a difference, it's still that question we have to ask ourselves. If by Friday you know how many votes came in during that extension period when the state court said you have to let votes come in between Tuesday and Friday, how many votes will there be? Will that be worth going to court on? Now, one other point I would make is that the closest thing we've seen today to somebody claiming that people are committing fraud is a statement tonight from the Nevada Republican Party saying they've written a letter to the Justice Department saying we want you to look into a possible fraud in Nevada. They say they have compared the list of change of address forms filed with the post office with the list of people who voted in the election, and they've come up with 3,062 names of people who filed a change of address but still voted in the election, and they say that's potential fraud. A couple of points about that. First of all, to be fraud, you have to vote knowing you're not entitled to vote. So you have to have an intent like with any criminal law. Secondly, merely because you don't live in the state, now this may sound strange, doesn't mean you can't still vote there. Military people, for example, they might file a change of address, students, and so forth.
All right, Pete, thanks very much. And joining us now in his first interview since Election Day is someone who knows all about waiting for results of a disputed election, former Vice President and 2000 Democratic presidential nominee Al Gore. Vice President Gore, thank you for spending some time with us. Good to see you.
Thank you for inviting me, Lester. Good to be here.
A lot of us who were veterans of covering that 2000 race have thought about you in the last 2 days and wondered how you're processing all this. I know the circumstances not exactly identical, but give us your thoughts about what we're watching and from the perspective of your race 20 years ago.
Well, first of all, this is a completely different election from the one 20 years ago. Joe Biden has multiple pathways to secure his victory. Of course, I'm for him, and I'm hoping that will be the case very soon. But the most important principle that I defended 20 years ago that Joe Biden and many others are defending tonight is let's count every legally cast vote and obey the will of the American people. You know, I looked at the people standing in line to vote in the middle of a pandemic, some of them waiting in line 10, 11 hours in some cases. And the determination of the American people, in spite of what they were facing, to have the largest turnout in the entire history of our country, they're heroes, and they're redeeming the promise of America.
Mr. Vice President, it's Savannah Guthrie, and before I ask you a question, I wanted to give a disclaimer. My now husband, worked for you 20 years ago and has continued to work for you over the years, so I just want our viewers to know that. But let me ask you what you thought of the president's presentation today in the briefing room. You know, we just had a discussion with Hugh Hewitt about it, and I guess the question is whether you think it is fair grounds for him to say, look, I think there might be vote fraud. I think there might be an issue with the integrity of the election. In your mind, is it legitimate for him to make those allegations right now?
No, and not without providing any evidence. I was disappointed in his statement, but you know, we're now, the election is over with. The campaign is over with. All that remains is to count the votes. I was thinking as the president was speaking in the White House of the advice Mark Twain once gave to a group of young voters. He said, do right. You'll gratify some and astonish the rest. If Donald Trump does face a situation where the votes are all counted and he turns out not to be successful, I would urge him to do the right thing. And yes, it would astonish a lot of people, but it would be good for our country. And I'm not being joking about this. We are in some ways divided, and we absolutely face the need to try to come together. In his statement earlier today, Joe Biden emphasized that imperative. Look, we face the COVID-19 pandemic. We have got to get on with solving the climate crisis. We've got to lift the economy in a sustainable way to get the things moving again. And that requires pulling people together. I'm very happy that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are really focused on that task.
Mr. Vice, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was wondering, how important is imagery in all this? You talked about, Joe Biden's been out a couple of times, 3 times now, I believe, since this election, and giving this aura of leadership and being in charge right now. Do you look at that and think about, how you handled your circumstances and things you wish you had done or things you would advise him to do?
Oh, I don't think he needs any advice from me, Lester. I think he's been terrific. And I think back during the last part of this campaign, you take the speech that he gave at Gettysburg, the speech that he gave in Warm Springs, Georgia, and several others. This is really world-class leadership from Joe Biden. I know I'm a partisan, and you can discount that if you want, but I'm genuinely impressed with his focus, with his messaging to the entire country. He says over and over again that he's running as a proud Democrat, but he will be an American president. And I think the way he's been handling this short period since the election on Tuesday is in keeping with that vision of what he wants to be as president. And of course, by contrast, Donald Trump has come out and, without any evidence whatsoever, alleged that because he's losing it must be fraudulent. I wish he wouldn't do that. But I will say this to those who share my political views. The time for, criticizing Donald Trump as if the campaign was still underway, that's past now. We need to find a way, and I surely hope the president will find it in his capability to join in this process. I don't know if he will, but I hope that he will find a way to fall in behind those of us who are trying to bring the country together.
Mr. Vice President, you don't often talk about what happened in 2000. It's not something you do a lot of interviews about. Your former running mate, Joe Lieberman, wrote an article talking about that moment when the United States Supreme Court came back and decided that the recount was over. And Joe Lieberman said, at that time, I said to Al Gore, we should go forward. We still have legal recourse. There's more to do here. And you said, no, for the good of the country, we got to end it. We got to end it right now. Can you talk about that moment, what your thinking was, and how difficult a moment that was for you 20 years ago?
Well, first of all, I don't remember there being any good legal recourse left. The governor of the state in question, where the ballots were not being counted and recounted, had an interest in this. There is no intermediate step between a final Supreme Court decision and violent revolution. And the Supreme Court interprets the laws. They issued an opinion, and to run the risk of violence in the streets without any change in the outcome seemed to me to be not in the best interests of the country. I've heard the president say that if he doesn't win, there may be this, that, and the other. Nobody should be inciting violence. That's dishonoring the mandate of the American people to make this choice. You know, the foundation of our country is the principle that all just power is derived from the consent of the governed. These elections are the way that we give that consent. And there's something majestic about listening to the will of the American people and then respecting the will of the American people when their decision is fairly tabulated and announced. We're on the verge of that moment. And I would urge all Americans, including especially those who might be tempted to follow the direction that Donald Trump pointed in the White House earlier today, to reject that approach and focus on what's most important, and that is the best interests of the United States of America.
And with that, we'll leave it there. Vice President Al Gore, good to see you. Thank you for taking some time with us tonight.
Thank you.
We will take another quick break here. We'll be back with more as the votes continue to come in. We'll give you an update top of the hour as our coverage continues right here on NBC. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you. Whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus.
You're not just any patient. You're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. It is 10 o'clock out east. It is 7 o'clock in the west. And welcome to our special Decision 2020 election coverage. And all eyes tonight are on 3 states where votes are still being counted as we speak. The numbers coming in as we speak. Joe Biden is coming closer to victory in the race for the presidency of the United States. Donald Trump is saying his lead get a little bit better, or at least his vote, it narrowing in Arizona. So some good news for him out west. And we are watching all of it.
These are states we've been watching closely for days. Pennsylvania, Arizona, a combined 47 electoral votes. Pennsylvania alone could put Biden over the top. And his numbers there have been rising all day as the vote count continues. And Chuck Todd, where do things stand right now? What's the pace of the numbers?
By the way, I do have to remind you, the president has to carry 4 of these 5 in order to get to 270. And I North Carolina is the one that he's best positioned in and all of that. In fact, there may not even be enough vote for Joe Biden to get it close enough for a recount, but we won't know that till the weekend. But the point is, he's got to win 4 of the 5. Why do I bring that up? Savannah, you talked about the good news that Donald Trump is receiving as this vote count in Arizona comes in. We've seen the lead narrow. I will say this, our own Kelly O'Donnell has a good Arizona source who said that last batch doesn't look like Trump won it enough, at least that some are concerned that it wasn't big enough. But we have seen it narrow, and last night we know it was on the number. We're not comfortable yet. We think this is going to close and be very tight and too close, essentially, for a clerical error, right? When you get to some points when they do a recanvass, a clerical error could undo that. So that's good news for the president. Here's the problem, though. As Arizona may look attainable, watch what's happening in Georgia. We are down to a 1,900 vote difference. We think there are about 5,000 to 7,000 more ballots. Vice President's been winning them 2-1. You know, you could do the math. This gets hinky pretty quickly. You know, it depends. I mean, it just depends. And you cannot make any guarantee left here on where those votes, we're talking a smattering at this point. But it's always fun when I'm on the board and I see the numbers change. And just what we were talking, Joe Biden just picked up looks like netted another 105 votes. So that's something we should be watching for all night. But the point is, as Arizona gets better for the president, Georgia gets worse. And now let's go to Pennsylvania, which, of course, Pennsylvania is a checkmate state because at 253, if Biden he could lose all 4 of these on the board here in the Sun Belt from Nevada to North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. But if he doesn't come up with Pennsylvania, it's a checkmate. And here's where we stand right now. It's down to a difference of 42,000. We've told you this before. Most of this vote appears to be in Joe Biden territory, and it's vote by mail, which
and how
in
much vote
Pennsylvania
is left, do they think?
Let's look here what our estimate is. That seems a little high. We don't think there's a full 400,000 more, but we think that's the problem. There could be, I think the last count, Andrea, you had was somewhere north of 300,000 for sure. And that's what we need to know. We're not quite sure what it is. Again, we say estimated for a reason, and we're waiting to see.
We have some new numbers from Philadelphia just in. They did all day from 9 to 7, they did 52,000 mail-in ballots. They still have left 72,677. So they're still working all night. But if it took them 9 to 7 to do the 52,000, by the Today Show, let's just say, just for a friendly plug, I'm not sure they will not get there.
We may not have the answer by the Today Show.
We can do some quick back of the envelope math. We think the way turnout has come, the best guess is that Joe Biden will net out of Philadelphia somewhere in the range of what Hillary Clinton got, say between 450 and 480,000. And so right now, he nets anywhere, if we assume he's going to net another 50 just out of Philadelphia, with what's left, you see what 50 would do. And that's just one county. We know that there's some more suburban vote there, and I believe there's still a little bit more in Allegheny. But again, we're now getting to that point where it's going to be a piece of it everywhere. But it's a trend that's should be troubling to the White House and certainly gives optimism to Wilmington. All right, Chuck, let's bring in Hallie Jackson at the White House right now. And we're going to get to Jeff Bennett at Biden headquarters. But Hallie, first of all, how is the White House, how are the president's people feeling about his remarks that he made this evening?
Listen, Lester, I think that the president is his own, as we often talk about, he's his own communications director, he's his own chief of staff. The president will say what he wants to say. Yes, he had prepared remarks, but this is a president who is driving the messaging. And right now, the messaging is, frankly, full of false claims, full of claims that have no evidence to back them up. And that is why I think in some Republican circles outside of the White House, you are seeing some concern about that. It is something that the president is likely not going to back away from anytime soon. In fact, we're only seeing him and his campaign push forward harder with these legal challenges that we were talking about a couple of minutes ago on the broadcast in some of these key states. Although, again, some of those legal challenges have fallen apart. I can tell you, Lester, that in the last couple of minutes, I've been able to confirm that the president's personal attorney, Jay Sekulow, is now coming on board to help with those legal challenges, at least one of them, that case that is already in front of the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania. Sekulow's name and face may be familiar to folks. Remember, he led the president's defense during the impeachment trial not that long ago. He is somebody who has been in the president's circle and is now working with the campaign on this. If that case were to move forward, Sekulow is somebody who has had experience arguing in front of the Supreme Court. That said, that may all be premature depending on where the numbers come in and how the ballots end up counted in Pennsylvania. I'm told by a source familiar with the strategy and the thinking there that the late arriving mail-in ballots in that particular case would probably have to be sort of outcome determinative, help determine the outcome of the race in order for the Supreme Court to even take that case in the first place. So there is sort of more firepower now being added to the president's legal maneuvering moving forward. But from a messaging perspective, I can also tell you that there is some concern about sort of how that plays out with the broader electorate, if you will, again, with some of those in the GOP. Interestingly, you've seen, even from the president's allies, Lester, Sean Spicer, for example, another familiar name, the former press secretary here at the White House, is coming out talking about how he is concerned even about the idea of the president talking about widespread fraud, given that there is no evidence to back that up in this election. And I'll tell you this, if the president were to, let's say, not pull out this race, that's obviously just a hypothetical at this point, his former chief of staff is now suggesting that that will not be the end of the president in the political arena, saying he thinks the president would be on the short list for those who would run in 2024. Lester.
All right, well, little room before then, but let's go to Jeff Bennett right now at Biden headquarters.
Yeah, and Lester, look, the latest news from here in Wilmington is that we're not going to see Joe Biden tonight. That's what multiple Biden campaign officials tell our team, that given the slow but steady pace of the results coming in, any sort of speech where Joe Biden might declare victory will have to wait for another night. Today, though, I can tell you that both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris spent much of the day here in Delaware, poring over the results with aides and then digging into policy. They got two of their regular COVID and economic policy briefings today. Of course, if they are elected, those will be the two top issues that they are immediately confronted with. And it was after those briefings that Joe Biden went before the cameras and he delivered that speech. He said that he has no doubt that once all of the votes are counted, that he and Senator Harris will be elected. But he said, let the process play out. He called for calm and he urged patience. Now, the campaign really is beyond confident. They said that they think that victory is imminent. And the reason for that is no sort of false hope. They are pointing to what they see as hard data. This campaign has already claimed Arizona, although to be clear, NBC News has not projected that state. They believe that Nevada will be tight, but they ultimately believe that Nevada will fall into their column. They've also said that Georgia, yesterday around this time, they called it a toss-up, but now they believe it is tilting in Joe Biden's favor. And in Pennsylvania, they're urging patience, but they think that Joe Biden will emerge with a healthy margin. So right now, they are sitting back, they are watching this all play out, and they're preparing. Earlier today, they were testing the stage here behind me. And then beyond that, Joe Biden's team, I'm told, is also preparing for a transition. So they are moving forward, but this has been a very disciplined campaign. The Biden campaign prides themselves on having been disciplined and tuning out all of the noise. So they are just really in a wait and see mode right now.
All right, Jeff Bennett, thank you.
All right, joining us now, Arizona's Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs. We talked to her 14 hours ago. We have to stop meeting like this, Madam Secretary. But the votes are still out in Arizona. We are starting to see them come in. We've gotten another batch tonight. You know my next question. How much is there left, and when are we going to get it?
There are approximately 285,000 ballots left in the state. Approximately 200,000 of those are in Maricopa County. They are counting through the night and updating us again, 9 a.m. Arizona time, 11 East Coast, and then again at 7 p.m. tomorrow. I think we'll see a large number of those votes counted tomorrow, and they told me they expect to get through the bulk of those ballots by this weekend.
So wait, they're pulling an all-nighter tonight to keep counting?
Yes, yeah, and they'll update totals again tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Arizona time.
Is there something different with the infrastructure this year in the way you're counting due to the pandemic?
They do have folks as spaced out as possible. It's a big room, but there's a lot of people in there doing the work that needs to be done. But we're actually ahead of where we were this year than where we were at this time in 2018. Maricopa County does have new equipment. It speeds up the adjudication process. And so things are going faster than they were 2 years ago.
Secretary Hobbs, do you know what the nature of these ballots that are outstanding are, whether they're provisional ballots, whether they're walk-in ballots? You know what we want to do with that information. The political analyst Chuck's over here doing math. He wants to analyze what that might mean for the candidates. So do you have an answer to that, what kind of ballots we're talking about?
Yeah, the bulk of them are still regular early ballots. For Maricopa County, I don't have the breakdown on how many of those are provisional ballots, but it's not a large portion of them. And the provisional ballots are going to take a little bit longer. Counties have up to 5 business days to rectify those, and determine their eligibility to be counted. So they won't be able to start counting those until Wednesday.
All right. We eagerly await. Thank you to the worker bees in Maricopa County and across Arizona who are counting votes as we speak and pulling an all-nighter. Thank you so much.
You want to?
I'm happy to do the math real fast for you.
Oh, Chuck's doing math.
Happy to do it. Look, judged by what she just said, 285,000 ballots, he needs to make up, approximately 50,000 votes. So he's got to win.
The president.
The president has to win 58.5% of those ballots, assuming they aren't provisional or anything. If it, he's got to win at that clip, which is actually a point higher than the clip he won that the ballots came in last night. So look, it's not impossible based on what we see.
Some of the batches that have been coming in the last day,
have gotten to about that
he's been
number,
at that
but he hasn't been over that margin. And here's the problem: you need to average that over all of it, so we don't, we don't see it. We'll see. Look, if they're coming a lot from Maricopa, and it's in the Republican parts of Maricopa, that could be helpful. One thing to remind people of, though, just because the vote by mail vote did break heavily for Joe Biden in Georgia, it broke heavily for Joe Biden in Pennsylvania. Arizona everybody votes by mail in Arizona.
It's 85% in Arizona.
Exactly. There is a comfort level here. It is just as easily possible that 60% of those folks are Republicans that chose to do this. So you cannot sit here and make any presumptions about who chose to vote by mail this year in the state of Arizona.
And I will say very briefly, my Democratic sources that I'm talking to in the state are still saying that while it's going to get closer, they're confident Biden can pull this out with about a 20,000 vote margin. So that's the number I'm looking for. If your board starts to say that the difference is lower than 20,000, then I'll say, okay, we've got a problem here that deviates from the status quo that they've been expecting.
Did you hear Saturday? Sounds like it's a working weekend for us. Okay?
Saturday.
That's when all the votes will be counted in
we can
Arizona.
wear jeans.
Yes,
okay,
good.
We can wear jeans if we come in on a weekend. That's the rules.
Great.
With us now is Robert Gibbs, former press secretary to President Obama and a political contributor for NBC News. Robert, I'm just curious your take. You've heard all this conversation. What is standing out in your mind tonight?
Well, I keep hitting refresh on my computer screen around Georgia. It's been kind of stunning to watch that vote, just the trickle in, maybe 1,000 at a time. But to watch President Trump's lead there dwindle, now under 2,000 votes. I think, as was just mentioned by Casey, I think the Biden campaign expects that Arizona will continue to get closer. But I think it's going to be interesting. Again, I think Biden, you'd still rather be Vice President Biden at this point because you've got some multiple paths here. And I think the real interesting thing, obviously the big prize that sits out there is Pennsylvania. And so I think you continue to watch that, continue to understand just how many votes are still left to count there.
If this thing goes the vice president's way, can President Trump still do damage? We heard him tonight with these false claims of conspiracies with the polls and illegal votes. If he's defeated, can he still do damage?
Absolutely. I think, there's no doubt that his supporters, which we know is, a significant amount of the country, he got more of those voters to come out in 2020 than he did in 2016. So they're going to watch and listen, and many will act and believe exactly what he tells them. So there is significant damage that he can do. I was struck by just listening to former Vice President Al Gore and to remember what that election was like 20 years. to lose an election by less than 600 votes nationally and to do it in the way he did it, I think speaks volumes and hopefully can be a model for not just Trump or anybody that loses an election, because the magnanimity that he left the office so close to being president of the United States.
Robert, thanks.
Thank you, Robert.
By the way, just to be also, it's politically better to be conciliatory because it puts you in a position. I mean, Al Gore was certainly in the position to run for president again by the way he handled himself there. There was a lot of positive vibes. So there's an argument. If the president is serious about wanting to run in 2024, how he handles this moment is actually perhaps helpful to his future political standing. So it's not just the long term the right thing for the country. And I think Al Gore, to this day, it's the single most important concession speech in this
I would
country's
say that
modern history.
People should just look it up.
Yeah.
Look that speech up and read it.
But again,
think about it.
Again, even looking at it from a crass political perspective, it doesn't make any sense for the president to behave this way if he actually has aspirations in 2024.
Well, so if I can just add one thing to this conversation, I mean, since we're talking with Hugh Hewitt, and since the president came out, we have started to see this start to change among Republicans. You had Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, both speaking on Fox News, buying into the president's frame for this. And I just got a note from an operative out in Kansas. They're saying that there's a groundswell coming in from voters who are saying that members should start to call out fraud. So I think that's some direct evidence of just how directly this president speaks to his base and how they react to it.
Here's the bottom line. If there's fraud, then they should file a lawsuit and prove it. And that's the bottom line. If there's fraud, everyone should want to know about it. But they have to file a lawsuit, they have to present evidence, and they have to get a federal judge to believe it. And if they can do that, then the conversation is worth having. But until that moment, I think that's the issue that folks are having with what the president is saying, is sort of throwing out these big accusations. If you have evidence of it, you come to court, you prove your case. That's the way we do it.
The problem is that his supporters are going to believe him, regardless of that process. And so that's why it is so important to point out exactly what you just did.
Well,
And that's what Al Gore was saying, that this is a really damaging message to people. Look, Rick Grinnell and company were in Arizona last night. Wasn't that Arizona?
Nevada.
No, Nevada last night.
Former ambassador in the Trump administration.
And the acting director of national intelligence. And we had two correspondents chasing after him, demanding, where's the fraud? You made these charges. What are you alleging? And he got on the bus and rode off. They won't put up what their evidence is.
Look, Matt Schlapp, who runs, it's called the American Conservative Union, they're the ones that put on the CPAC conference. CPAC is a big gathering of conservative activists, and it's evolved over the years. Sometimes it's been more of mainstream conservatism, like sort of to shorthand it, the Chamber of Commerce wing. Al Cardenas is somebody who used to run the American Conservative. Matt Schlapp, who runs it now, and he put out a tweet. He says, "Dear GOP Republicans, if you ever want to be featured at CPAC or grow this movement, get out now and defend the counting of every compliant ballot with full transparency. We need every one of you. Hashtag America versus socialism." And you've seen, now it's interesting, I'm going to read the governor of West Virginia, a Republican. This is somebody who is a Trump ally. What's interesting, some of them are trying to walk a line. Listen to this comment from Governor Justice. "We must stand up for transparent, fair, free elections. President Trump is right to demand every legally cast ballot be counted with full transparency and accountability. This is critical to instill trust, confidence, and integrity of America's elections." I give him credit. It sounds like he's supporting the president, but he's not saying anything that I think anybody else on the Democratic side of the aisle would be saying about what you want to see happen.
Let's not forget in 2016, the president launched a commission, or 2017 commission, to look for voter fraud in the last election and couldn't find it. 3 million votes.
Well, that was an election he won, too. So let's remember that as well. We've seen this theme from the president for a long time. So we'll see if they can produce evidence and prove their case. And we'll continue to watch it. Our Special Decision 2020 special coverage will continue in just a moment. We're back right after this. Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You ready to go to work?
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses who pulled together when their boss needed help battling coronavirus. You're not just any patient, you're their friend.
These folks saved my life. Thank God that there are people who want to run towards a pandemic as opposed to running away from a pandemic.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
from every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back, NBC Election Headquarters. We are in day 3, waiting for a resolution to the election. Waiting is not easy, but compare that to the 5 weeks it took to find out who won the 2000 election. Earlier tonight, we spoke to the man who came out on the losing end of that contest, former Vice President and Democratic presidential candidate Al Gore, and he shared his perspective on this moment we're in now.
That if he doesn't win, there may be this, that, and the other. Nobody should be inciting violence. That's dishonoring the mandate of the American people to make this choice. You know, the foundation of our country is the principle that all just power is derived from the consent of the governed. These elections are the way that we give that consent. And there's something majestic about listening to the will of the American people and then respecting the will of the American people when their decision is fairly tabulated and announced. We're on the verge of that moment. And I would urge all Americans, including especially those who might be tempted to follow the direction that Donald Trump pointed in the White House earlier today, to reject that approach and focus on what's most important, and that is the best interests of the United States of America.
Al Gore said he had no recommendations for Joe Biden. Thinks Joe Biden's doing what he has to do right now.
It's interesting because, of course, Al Gore is out in the public a lot talking about his passion, which is climate change and his activism there. You don't hear too many interviews about what happened in 2000. That's not something he's anxious to revisit all that often. So it was interesting that he agreed at this moment to come on and talk about that and try to send a message of reassurance in American democracy.
I think it was, first of all, you asked the question and the way you asked the question, Savannah, because remarkably, he does not talk about this. I've talked to him and interviewed him, and he does not respond on that subject. And I think you're absolutely right. This was a signal. Let's all take a deep breath. Let's think about the higher purpose of our democracy, of what you can gain. And even if it's just for personal political benefit, as Chuck was just saying, if you want to have a future in politics, what Donald Trump should do right now, if he does end up on the short end of these votes, and we don't know that yet, that he should not be rousing the base.
Did you hear what Vice President Gore said to people who support Joe Biden? He said, settle down. The campaign is over.
Right.
Now just everybody calm down and let the votes be counted. That was a message not just to Trump supporters, but to Biden supporters as well.
And we're here because the votes are still being counted.
Yeah.
That's the story.
And I think, too, I mean, and to Chuck's point, I mean, we're looking for statesmen right now. And the country's been very short on that. Statesmen, stateswomen, people who are willing to stand up and think about this in a context that is beyond just running for president next time, because we should not lose sight of the fact that this is such an enormous moment in our history. What the president did, we're so used to it, we're almost inured to it because it happens so often. And I think that's one of the questions that's facing every single person, Republican, Democrat, and the fact that Al Gore was willing to come out here and talk about his experience when he never does is evidence that I think a lot of people are feeling that pressure tonight.
Look, I have to say, I'm just sort of, I'm still, I know we're, in one way you just said we're numb to President Trump. I'm still can't believe an American president wants to question the integrity of our election process. Like, the one thing we've counted on over is our American presidents sort of stand up for how we do democracy. And in fact, we want to help the world do democracy like we do. And
well, I just want to say, in 2000, the Democrats and the Gore campaign did fight the results of the election in court, in the judicial process. They had a recount. They went through the courts. They lost in the courts. And that's how the process works. If the president, as I said before, if he has evidence of fraud, if he has a lawsuit, if he has a cause of action, then he should take that evidence and put it before a court. If he's entitled to a recount, there's nothing wrong with requesting a recount. He is well within his rights. I think the issue that people are focusing on tonight is making allegations that are unfounded of fraud and sowing doubts about the democracy and the suggestion that votes shouldn't be counted, because there are votes to be counted, and we don't know the results of this election yet. The fact of the matter is, in some states it's going in Biden's direction, and in some states it's going in President Trump's direction. So let's count those votes.
Right. I mean, by the way, it's kind of funny. We know in Pennsylvania, to try to transition here, Pennsylvania, we know there's approximately 208,000 votes left to be counted. We learned in Arizona, where's my I have so many.
Arizona had 285,000 left.
Oh, right. It's staring
200
me,
of which were in Maricopa.
It's staring me in the face. I told you that the president needed 58.5% of those remaining in order to get it. Well, Joe Biden needs 59.5% of the remaining vote in Pennsylvania to catch the president there. So just an interesting little symmetry there. But let me give you a rundown of where we're at here in Pennsylvania. The president currently leads right now by a little over 41,000 votes. We've gotten this report about 208,000. And we seem to know which counties is which. So look, I gave you the percentage there. Joe Biden needs to win at a 59% clip. He's been winning at a larger clip than that. This is not unusual. So of this 208,000, we know that 72,000 are going to come out of Philadelphia. He's been winning there at an 80% clip. We also know that in Delaware County, there's 13,000. He's been in the county at a 62% clip. Will it be the same? That's, we don't know for sure, but it's certainly a way to estimate it. In Bucks County, we've got 13,000. Lehigh County has 15,000 remaining ballots. And Chester, where did I go here? You're going to yell at me, Casey. I'm sorry. It's getting late. Chester has about 2,500 ballots. So that's just what we think is left. It's our best reporting on what's left. And again, Joe Biden wins 60% of what's left. He will make up that margin and narrowly. But I'll tell you this: if this is what we're talking about, the Biden campaign had said, "Oh, we're going to have some real pad here. Maybe 80, 100, maybe even I heard one say maybe they'll end up winning Pennsylvania by 200,000 votes." If these numbers, he may win. Maybe he wins Pennsylvania. It's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be by more than what he won Wisconsin or not. It's going to be awfully close.
And it's interesting because Pennsylvania would be the deal sealer for him.
It would be the keystone.
It would be the keystone. Very good trivia.
That's where that comes from.
You've been waiting for that, huh?
You did it on
Totally.
2 hours sleep, too. But that's also where probably the most promising litigation for the president is in Pennsylvania, in a case that's already come up before the Supreme Court, is kind of waiting in the wings. So,
and they are those ballots, they segregated ballots, and this has to do with any absentee ballots that come in after Election Day, but that were postmarked in this 3-day window. Right. That was sort of, the Supreme Court let it stand for now. So it did sort of introduce some uncertainty.
The legal term is kicking the can down the road. They said, okay? Pause, okay.
Is that in Black's Law Dictionary?
Yeah. It has to do with these ballots that if they were sent before Election Day and arrived by Friday, they could be counted, and there was a dispute over that. And if that becomes a live issue.
But now there's a new member of the court because she did not have time to read the briefs till then, but she's had another 2 weeks.
Yeah, so plot could thicken even more. Let's turn to the man who definitely understands the numbers behind this election better than anyone, our Director of Elections, John Lopinski. John, it's good to see you. So what do you make? We've been hearing your protege Chuck here talking through the numbers. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, right now I think that Biden's best path to 270 is definitely through Pennsylvania. We've been crunching the numbers, and over the last 24 hours, every batch of vote that comes in just keeps pushing the results closer to Biden. All our models are pointing to Biden. We probably think if the results continue the way they are, that Biden will, win by 50 or 60,000 votes.
Well, talk about Arizona, if you can. We just saw some new numbers dropped in within the last couple of hours. I think there's more expected tonight. Are you getting an idea where those are coming from and what they might be telling us?
Yeah, the thing that's most important is, obviously a lot of them are coming from Maricopa, but they're looking a lot like Election Day vote. I mean, and what I mean by that is same day vote, because as Chuck had pointed out, almost everybody votes by mail. They're breaking Trump. This race is going to be razor thin. There's no way that someone should be calling this race right now. I think that it is definitely going to become extremely close. I think Biden probably has a slight edge, but only a slight edge.
What about Nevada? That's one where another cliffhanger. I think they said we would hear more from them tomorrow morning, but it's not going to be the end of the story. But that's another one where Biden gained some vote today, but not enough for folks like you to call it and say this is going to be his state.
Yeah, I think it's really the vote that's out in Clark is going to be really important. It's early vote. Everything is early vote there. We actually thought there might be a chance of calling that race today, but they kind of gave us a false alarm because they gave us so little vote out of Clark. We're expecting quite a bit more tomorrow at noon, so that there's a possibility that we could actually call that race tomorrow. It just depends upon what they give us and what the vote shows.
All right.
I was going to say, dare we ask him about Georgia? But we know the Georgia story.
That was my sign language to Savannah. Just throw.
I was sending you a note. I couldn't even read
any
his
more on
handwriting.
Georgia? Any more on Georgia, Lopinski? Any more insight?
Yeah, I mean Georgia. Yeah, I think Georgia is just not a callable race right now. It is just going to be so close. I mean, Biden may go up just a little bit, but it doesn't meet our standards. It is going to be a race that's going to be, I think a check mark probably won't go in there for a couple weeks.
All right. Oh. It's literally tied. All right, John.
It's 2 weekends.
Thanksgiving, actually.
Yes,
okay.
Speak for yourself.
John Lopinski, thanks for your hard work. We appreciate it. Time for another break. We're back in a moment with more special coverage of Decision 2020 as the votes roll in just a moment.
Changing world. Download the NBC News app.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust for a better understanding of the stories that matter most. Check out the MSNBC Daily today at msnbc.com.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
from every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Welcome back, everybody. Those are the states to watch. Votes are being counted as we speak. They're pulling an all-nighter in Arizona to count the approximately 285,000 votes that are left in that state. It's a nail-biter. Let's go to Janet Napolitano. She was governor of Arizona from 2003 to 2009 before serving as Secretary of Homeland Security under President Obama. Talk to you about the elections in a moment, Secretary Napolitano, but I bet you still have some pretty good sources in Arizona politics. What are you hearing about these final votes? How are folks on the ground feeling about their chances? You're a Democrat, of course, for Joe Biden.
Well, I think, as everyone has said, the votes will continue to narrow, but the rate at which they have to narrow really favors Vice President Biden at this point. So they're going to do an all-nighter in Maricopa County. That's 200,000 of the 285,000 outstanding votes. But of the other 85,000, you have to anticipate there'll be a big swath from Pima County, which is heavily Democratic, and also Coconino County, which is the 4th largest county in Arizona, and that also is heavily Democratic. So I think if I were the vice president tonight, I'd feel pretty good about Arizona.
And what about Pennsylvania? We heard John Lopinski say that maybe 50,000 net for Joe Biden there. What are your thoughts about Pennsylvania?
Well, I'm no Pennsylvania expert, but as I look at the map, it seems as though the bulk of the outstanding ballots are in the urban areas, the Philadelphia area, the Allegheny County, the Pittsburgh area. Again, that should be Biden territory. So I, like the rest of the country, will definitely be watching that one.
Secretary Napolitano, you were the Homeland Security Secretary under President Obama. Elections fell under your watch. There have obviously been accusations raised about voter fraud, the specter of a lack of integrity in our voting process. And, you know, there are folks who hear that and they're really worried about it. They're really wondering, hey, are these votes being counted fairly? Is there sufficient transparency? Are these votes legal? What word of reassurance or encouragement do you have tonight?
Well, I would say that we really have not seen any actual evidence of any sort of widespread fraud in the conduct of our elections. You know, America's proud of the way we do elections. It seems a little messy because it's 50 states, et cetera, but each state has its rules. Each state has its local officials that manage the count. and the count has been proceeding. Some states take longer than others. That's perfectly normal. And so we just need to take a patience pill and let the counts get completed.
All right. Well, Madam Secretary, thank you so much for being with us. Good to talk to you.
Good to see you.
She had to wait a few days for a race of her own, her governor's race. Remember that, Chuck, in Arizona?
She did. And by the way, as you were talking, the Trump campaign put out an email calling on Fox News and the Associated Press to rescind their Arizona projection. And it says ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, Decision Desk Headquarters, Reuters, and the New York Times have all declined to call this race. And they are calling on them to do that. So
I think it's important that it be understood that race calls by networks are informative.
None of them are
no official capacity.
None of
we
them
have
are.
no influence over the vote. And
Look, we certainly are proud of our abilities to count votes and do the math for folks, but we're not an official entity either, and we're not going to pretend that we are. We're just trying to be transparent because you don't want government doing the count. It is good that the media, the whole point of a nice free democracy is that we're a check. We're a check to make sure that there isn't government control. We know that in other countries that pretend they're democracies, they decide what the vote totals are. And this is what is part of our system.
And none of these decisions are final until weeks from now anyway, when secretaries of state calibrate and make them official.
well, we're keeping a close eye on the vote count in Georgia tonight. Blaine Alexander joins us from Atlanta. I think Chuck is talking about a smattering of votes coming in. Do we know where they're coming in from and how quickly they're tabulating them?
Well, that's the big question, Lester. You know, we've got about 16,000 votes that are still outstanding. The biggest county that we're watching right now, though, is Clayton County. They've still got several thousand votes that are outstanding. That's according to the latest number from the Secretary of State's office. And that is a county from the Democrats that I've talked to tonight here in the state of Georgia that has them feeling optimistic. It's this county in metro Atlanta, a little bit to the south of Atlanta, but it's a heavily Democratic county. So, you know, that's something that we're watching. But I have a feeling, you've heard Chuck talk about this a lot, I have a feeling that in the hours to come, and certainly into tomorrow, one of the big things that we're going to be watching are those overseas and military ballots, about 8,900 that could possibly come in. That doesn't mean that they all will, but that's how many are out there. And we know that, one, certainly that could affect the number. In fact, I talked with the mayor of Savannah, Georgia tonight, down in Chatham County. That's the county that delivered a large number of votes for Joe Biden. And he tells me that they believe they have just over 400 ballots that are possibly in that. So when you're talking about a margin, a difference of just about 1,700 votes, those 400 votes could make a difference. So we're going to be watching that closely. And Lester, the other thing that it will really impact is the timing of this, when all of this will be completed, because again, you know, this is something that as long as those ballots are postmarked by Tuesday, they have until the end of the day tomorrow to actually get in and be counted. So that means that it could conceivably take the count into the weekend. When asked about that, the Secretary of State official certainly did not push back on that and didn't rule it out. So those two things that we're going to be watching. The other thing is that with this razor-thin margin, we are almost certainly in recount territory. The Secretary of State official talked about that today as well, that even though we're watching these votes come in, even though we're waiting for them to come in, they're already bracing and kind of gearing up and essentially ready for a possible recount once the time comes.
Yeah,
Lester.
Blaine, thanks. You look at that map, and it seems like a trite term. Every vote counts. You know, if you voted in the state of Georgia and you look at that number, you can see your vote.
Yeah,
by the way, she brought up Clayton County. This is a county that Joe Biden's carrying with just under 85%. Our numbers here indicate 4,300 ballots on there. So you do 85% of that, and in and of itself, it could erase the 1,700 vote lead. Let's wait till they're all counted. But wow, I'm trying. Well, hey, Georgia, welcome to Georgia. Welcome to that club, because this could be the closest of any state, I think, since Florida's 537.
Well, it's funny because I was thinking, I'm old enough to remember 2016 when Michigan had the narrowest margin, and it was 10,000, which just seems like a huge amount of votes in
we may have 3 states under 10,000.
Yes, okay.
That's so 2016.
Yes, it is. Let's get our former Democratic Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill in this conversation, as well as conservative columnist and editor of National Review, Rich Lowry. They're both NBC News political contributors. All right, how you feeling tonight? Claire McCaskill, you get to go first. The race is tightening up in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, not going your direction in Arizona. How are you feeling?
Well, I got to be honest. I feel great about the people speaking and the fact that it appears they've spoken that they want Joe Biden as president. I feel terrible. I'm depressed and sad and angry that our country has a president that doesn't respect the essence of a democracy. He's filed lots of lawsuits. They haven't won any of them. The only lawsuit they've won, literally the only, as Andrea talked about earlier, the only lawsuit they've won said the observers got to be 6 feet away instead of 10 feet away. The notion that he would tear up this election like that is really depressing to me. Now, the good news I think is cool. You guys just talked about Clayton County in Georgia. That is John Lewis territory. He represented Clayton County. So there would be some beautiful symmetry if Clayton County put Joe Biden over in Georgia. That would make John Lewis very happy.
Rich, how are you feeling about where things stand right now?
Well, it's pretty much where everyone's thought it was and where the Trump people have thought it is, which is they have a shot in Arizona. Georgia's a complete coin flip, and they got to pray over Pennsylvania, which is really sliding the wrong way and is not the whole ball game because Biden has passed without it, but Trump doesn't. He needs Pennsylvania, and it's eroding for him.
Is it a risk to suggest that Donald Trump is ready to move past this thing, or that he could pull this out somehow?
No, he's not moving past this thing probably ever. And this is the problem with what he said tonight, right? I like his policies. I've defended him from a lot of unfair criticisms. But the core problem with Donald Trump is that he's never put the imperatives of the institution of the presidency over and above his selfish interest. And it's just his character and his temperament just never to admit defeat or that he's been defeated fairly. So he's never going to stop saying this. And my sense is a lot of Republicans are troubled by it, maybe even appalled by it. But their calculation at the moment is there's no percentage in going out now and denouncing Trump for this when he's still alive. And they figure they can build some credibility with the president himself, maybe his supporters, if they wait, and if and when the time comes when the president has actually lost, then go to him and say, hey, tone it down, or hey, stop this. And just more broadly, Lester, one lesson of this election is President Trump's not going away. This was not a landslide defeat. This was not a total repudiation. And even if he loses, he's still going to have a lot of traction in the Republican Party. I think it'll be comparable to Sarah Palin when she lost in the vice presidential race in 2008 with John McCain at the top of the ticket. For 2 years straight, media was still obsessed with everything she said, and hers was the most important endorsement in the Republican Party. I expect that to be true with Trump for a while, even if he loses.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but we've all been up for 3 days. It reminds me in Star Wars, Rich, when Obi-Wan Kenobi passes away and only becomes stronger.
I didn't see that coming.
This
Wow.
is my territory.
I
love this.
I know even Lowry didn't see that one coming.
So I take your point, Rich, and I turn it into a Star Wars reference. But let me say to you, Claire, though, because I've been thinking a lot about this. This wasn't a total rebuke of Donald Trump. First of all, we don't know if he's going to win. He still does have a chance of winning this presidency. So let's just table that for the moment and let's let these votes be counted. But the Republicans gained seats in the House. They are holding steady in the Senate at the moment. You've got a huge number of Americans who voted for him and who like him. And if you're Joe Biden right now, what's your strategy going forward? Let's say he does win. Are you going to reach out to them? Everyone likes to criticize the president saying he never expanded beyond his base. Do you think Joe Biden will reach out and try to expand beyond his base?
You can already hear the echoes of Joe Biden and how he's going to lead, because he keeps saying over and over again, I want to be president for everybody in America, not just those who voted for me. I think he will absolutely make every effort to reach out and talk about economic policies that will help everybody in America, everyone who works in America. And besides standing for core principles of the Democratic Party on a number of different fronts, I think he's going to really try to unite. And that's not something we've had for the last 4 years. And I think the country is craving it.
Do you think the left of the party will let him do that?
I think as long as he is true to the principles of our party in terms of trying to move the needle on the issues that we care about most, climate, economic opportunity, economic equality, in terms of making sure that we're rewarding work and not just people who have enough money to invest.
All right, got to leave it there for the moment. Claire and Rich, thank you so much. Young people, are they looking up Star Wars? Everybody knows Star Wars.
Oh, what do you mean? Tomorrow's a Mandalorian night.
Okay.
Please.
Yes, it is.
The Star Wars franchise cuts across all age groups.
Okay, good. I'm so glad. We've got more to come. Decision 2020 special coverage continues. Don't go anywhere.
Watch what they do, not what they say.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
The battleground blitz as we enter the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell them right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
All right. Well, presidential historian John Meacham joins us now, an NBC News contributor. Always good to have you along. We're impatient folks because we're used to, in a society, we're used to things happening right now. Yep. And kind of remind us that we knew this was going to take a while, but maybe it just didn't sink in.
Absolutely. In 1801, it took until February. So I don't think we're quite in that zone. So I wouldn't hit the panic button quite yet on that. I'm cautiously optimistic about American democracy tonight. I think that the Biden national number is significant. And I think we have to some extent, put this in context. We tend to take elections once they're done and think of them as so decisive, so clear. The results were there was never any doubt. But in 1948, 1960, 1968, 1976, 1980, 1992, 1996, 2000, 2004, and 2016. We had presidents who got about the popular percentage that Joe Biden is polling right now. So that's Truman, Kennedy, Nixon, Carter, Reagan, Clinton, Bush, and Trump. And we're a ferociously divided country. It's sulfurous right now. We have a president who has proven that those of us who argued that decency and democracy were on the ballot this year, that we were right. But the people are speaking. So let's count the votes, let's obey the law, and let's remember that disagreement's the oxygen of democracy as long as we respect fact itself.
I always find at times like this, it's good to have perspective because I think a lot of folks feel really anxious in their hearts. Some are worried about the outcome of the election, but some are just worried about the country and how divided it does seem and how personal it seems and how there's so much vitriol. But we have been through hard times before. We fought a civil war, after all. If you could just leave us with a final thought on the resilience of America and maybe call us to our better angels as we close tonight.
Well, I argue that the soul of the country is an arena of contention, like all of us individually, where we do battle between what Lincoln called our better angels and our worst instincts. And I don't know about you all, but if my better angels win out 51% of the time, that's a heck of a good day. And I don't have that many of those. And so, we are strong. And we're fairly young, too. We're watching the numbers come out of John Lewis's old 5th Congressional District of Georgia. And remember, 55 years ago, John Lewis walked into a line of state troopers willing to die for the right that so many of us have exercised this week.
Well, John, I always appreciate your words.
That vote is precious. That experiment is precious.
Thank you for that. We'll continue to watch the count as they come in, and of course, we'll come back on the air as events warrant. I'll see you tomorrow in Nightly News.
And I'll see you bright and early, maybe with some new voting results. For all of us here at NBC News, have a good evening. We'll see you tomorrow morning. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress,